Hello, my name is Shaughnessy, and this is my podcast called Samples of Science Cuisine, and I would like to introduce today's guest.
Understandable.
Yeah. Go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
Okay, so my name is Emma Padden. I am a senior graduating this May as an immunology medical microbiology major, and I'm sitting here across from my co-worker as well as my fellow student, Chauncey.
Can you go a little bit into why you chose IMMB?
Yeah, I can. So coming out of high school, I really didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do. I knew that I was interested in health science, and I knew that I wanted to end up somewhere where I would never get bored and there would always be something new. So when I was looking through the course catalog at WVU, IMMB really stood out to me.
Yeah. So when did you first start hearing about colleges in high school? And you might want to hold your microphone just because I don't think it's picking up well.
Okay. So I was probably a sophomore whenever I started thinking about colleges.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of a standard in my household. It was always a mandate that we were going to college, and it wasn't really ever an option.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of always in the back of my mind. It was always something that I thought about, especially when I started high school.
Yeah. Okay. Did they give you any guidance in high school? Were there like guidance counselors or anything like that?
We had guidance counselors, but they weren't the best, in my honest opinion. I had probably the best out of all of them. She was helpful in the realm of high school, anything that I needed, but as far as college went, we had not a whole lot of guidance. I mean, they gave us brochures, but that was pretty much the end of their help.
Yeah. So how did you hear about WVU?
My mother is a graduate of here as well as my grandfather, and I spent my childhood coming here for football games. So I always knew it was here.
Yeah. So do you like the IMMB major?
I
And be honest.
had a huge change of heart. The first 2 years, I really didn't know if this was the place that I wanted to be. It was a struggle at first. The classes that the major requires you to take outside of major-specific courses were pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I felt pushed to my limits, but by the time we hit about the middle of sophomore into junior year, I came around to it. I started really, really enjoying the coursework that we had, at least the major-specific coursework that we had. And then my senior year has been really enjoyable.
Yeah. Can you go a little bit more into the coursework besides the major-specific classes that are in this major?
Yeah, so we had to take lots of chemistries, which was like my kryptonite. We had to take organic and inorganic 2 semesters of each, which was definitely the hardest for me. We had some calculus, some statistics, your basic English courses, but really the most difficult was the chemistry for me. Biology kind of came second nature. I feel like I've always excelled in that field, so it relates really well to the major specific courses, but the chemistry tripped me up for sure.
Yeah, it was chemistry and physics for me. I hated physics.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Did you ever consider changing your major?
Honestly, no. I definitely got to the point probably middle of sophomore year where I was thinking, wow, I really need to get it together. But I was never uninterested in the major. I was never unhappy with what I was learning.
Okay. So I know you work in the lab because I work in the lab with you.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through what a typical day looks like for you as a student and then as a worker in the lab?
Sure. So when I first started in the lab, I started during the summer, so I had a much more free schedule. So I spent pretty much 6 to 8 hours in the lab every day, which is not a big deal at all in the summer, but it took a significant change whenever the semester started. A typical day for me looks like arriving at the lab in the morning because all of my courses are in the afternoon. So I'll start my work day in the morning, meet with Dr. Emel Sinkilich, who I work under. get a plan for what's going on during the week and anything that additional she needs me to accomplish during the day. And then start my lab work in the morning, probably finish up around mid-afternoon, sometime after lunch, and then go to school. Okay. That's pretty much the end of my day, unless I have anything extra to finish in the lab after school.
Okay. What can you tell me about what you're working on in the lab?
So right now I am on a Pseudomonas aeruginosa monoclonal antibody project. Again, I work with Dr. Emil Sinkilich, as well as some of the grad students and the lab techs that work in Mariette Barbier's lab. This project is basically developing monoclonals against Pseudomonas aeruginosa, as well as other gram-negative pathogens as a treatment for sepsis, or at least a potential treatment for sepsis. Currently, I'm running some ELISAs, which are an assay that measures binding of monoclonal antibodies, in our case at least. And then next week, we are starting a mouse trial with sepsis and our monoclonal antibodies.
That sounds very cool.
Really interesting. I enjoy it.
So can you describe a little bit what monoclonal antibodies are?
Sure. In my best effort, I will. So basically the body, our immune system, makes antibodies from B cells whenever we get infected with a pathogen. So say you get sick with the flu or you get sick with a cold, your body will naturally produce antibodies against whatever pathogen you're infected with. Monoclonals follow the same idea, except we see people get really sick with sepsis and other diseases similar to sepsis that are caused by bacteria and viruses, and their immune system gets overwhelmed. The time in which a pathogen is able to replicate and infect is too quick for the body to catch up. Mm-hmm. So the goal of monoclonal antibodies is to really supplement the immune system and give additional help for bacterial and viral clearance to aid in the dissipation of infection.
Okay. Do you anticipate the trial going well?
Yeah. I've done a lot of in vitro work, so outside of animal work, just like benchtop work, to confirm that the monoclonal antibodies that Dr. Emil Sinkilich created were functional and were able to bind to the pathogens that we expect them to. So I am hopeful that in the next sepsis trial, it'll be functional and it will be able to clear infection.
Good. That sounds good. Backtracking a little bit to like life in this major, can you go through like what is the environment or the atmosphere like in the IMMB major?
I'll start with my peers. I love the group that I spend time with. I mean, it's a very small, very intimate setting because there's only 10 of us and we've all gotten pretty close as the years have gone by, and I've definitely made some friends that I will not lose in the next coming years. So the peer group is fantastic. The resources that we have within the School of Medicine and the IMMB department are fantastic as well. I don't feel like we lacked anything in regards to necessary resources that we needed during class or during labs. Mm-hmm. I think the teaching staff, as we move forward, is getting better and better. I know that when we started, I had some not so great experience with staff, but as time moved on, I grew close with a lot of the newer professors, and I really enjoyed some of the coursework that I went through.
Yeah, definitely. Are you in any clubs on campus?
Not technically, no. I volunteer at Animal Friends, and I pretty much just keep to myself otherwise.
Yeah. What are your future plans when you graduate?
So my future plans, I intend to take a gap year to spend time working more in the lab. I really want to get a few papers under my belt before I go to apply for medical school.
Okay.
I'll probably apply within the state as well as some surrounding, but it's going to depend on MCAT scores, right?
Yeah, that's what it depends on. And cost.
Of course.
So, backtracking again a little bit, kind of overall picture. What has been your biggest failure? And you can go back as far as you want to. Biggest failure, biggest thing you regret, and then what has been your biggest success? Whatever one you want to answer first. Biggest success, biggest thing you're proud of.
That's a super good question.
You can take a second.
I think probably my biggest failure thus far is I've taken the MCAT once and I didn't get the score that I really wanted. I was pretty far off. And that was detrimental somewhat. But I also think that it gave me a good basis of what I know, and now I know what to work on to get better, right?
Yeah.
So it was a failure in a sense, but it was also kind of a motivator and gave me a good idea of what I need to work on, right?
Yeah, and it gave you experience with the exam,
right,
and things like that.
I'm kind of a terrible test taker, especially like too. Standardized tests. Really terrible standardized test anxiety, and sometimes I feel like everything that I've ever learned just kind of goes in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So I feel like my greatest success in the future could be learning how to manage test anxiety and kind of having coping mechanisms to get through that kind of test.
Yeah.
But my current greatest accomplishment, at least college-wise, is getting through all of the chemistries.
Yeah.
And I said that on our graduate survey for Dr. Collins.
Yeah.
Like, making it through all 4 semesters of chemistry without dropping out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's real. That's real. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I feel like a better measure is where I see myself in 10 years.
That's the next question.
So 5 years, hopefully, I will be in some form of medical school. I don't know where.
Do you have a place that you want to go to?
Surprisingly enough, I recently went to Lewisburg.
Okay.
And toured the DO school, and I really, really like the area. So that's high up on my list. WVU is obviously an option, but I don't think I would have any problem going somewhere different for a change of scenery, a change of pace.
Yeah.
So pretty much I'd like to end up in a West Virginia school. I feel like that's most fiscally responsible. But I feel like I could pretty much end up anywhere medical school-wise, and I would be happy.
Yeah. So how about in 10 years?
So in 10 years, my 10-year goal is to graduate medical school. And then I am interested in, at some point, going through a fellowship to get into immunology or infectious disease. So that's kind of my goal, 10 years wise, is to end up in a really cool fellowship that I'm interested in. My goal for medical school is probably internal meds. It's kind of the easiest way to enter into like the immunology field.
Yeah.
But I would love to go into a fellowship of infectious disease. That's super interesting to me.
Yeah. Infectious, that's what I wanted to do when I was going to go to medical school.
Yeah.
This one's going to be a little bit shorter, but that's okay. This episode. What is something that you wish you knew about? We'll start with you wish you knew about the major before you entered into it.
I think.
The next question is something you wish you knew before you entered into college. So whatever one you want to answer first.
So something I wish I knew before I entered college is that every year that I get older, time goes faster. And that it was going to absolutely fly by. Like before I even blink, it's gone. So I wish I had maybe slowed down more frequently and kind of smelled the roses theoretically, but I think college students get really caught up in what's happening right in front of them, and I'm no exception. I was definitely really caught up in my coursework and whatever was going on in my in my life outside of coursework. So appreciating where you are more. I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
But major-wise, I wish I would have known how much damn work this would be. It was a lot. I mean, it was a huge learning curve, and it was really fast, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't go anywhere else or do anything different, but I definitely could have prepared myself better.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard major.
That's for sure. And not that I was expecting it to be easy. I didn't expect college to be easy, but for me, high school wasn't hard.
Yeah.
I didn't have to work at high school. There were a slim few classes where I felt like I needed to study for a test or an exam. And that's not the way that I am in college.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a really rough first semester of college because I didn't know how to study and be proactive.
And it was during COVID.
Yeah, so we were stuck inside.
Yeah. So everything was on screen.
But I didn't know or develop any study strategies really until I got to like my second semester of college, when I realized, oh, I really need to figure this out or I'm going to suffer. Like, this is rough.
Yeah. It's definitely a shock to the system, especially when we went from first semester maybe being in the lab every like 2 or 3 weeks, because then somebody would get COVID and we'd all have to isolate, to second semester, not even second semester, second year, being in the lab, being in class full time.
Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. I mean, the first semester of college, I was in my dorm alone. I lived in Seneca, so I'm like shut off from the world in my little closet of a room doing my online class and just not really meeting anyone, not talking to anyone, not going to events. So it was a really lonely first year, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got sent home second semester, right?
Maybe. Yeah, they were all classes were pretty much still online second semester.
So,
but we could stay if we wanted to.
Going home, I went home my second semester, I think. And it definitely helped with the whole not being isolated, but it was still so strange. It was a strange first college experience.
Yeah, definitely. It didn't feel like, for me, it didn't feel like college.
Yeah, absolutely.
It didn't really feel like anything. Like, I talked with my roommate, I talked with Holly, and we never left our dorm room unless it was for food.
Right.
We were just in our dorm room 24/7.
It was very strange. And at that point, I hadn't been diagnosed with celiac disease yet, so I was pretty sick all the time. It was not a great time, because I really hadn't figured out why I was so terribly sick all the time, and I didn't understand what was going on. So it definitely picked up after we came back for sophomore year.
Yeah. When we came back for sophomore year, it felt like college, but we weren't prepared for it.
Right. Absolutely. I feel like we came back and I was ready to continue with my, 2 online classes and not worrying about anything else, but it was not like that. It was such a rapid pickup.
Yeah.
Especially with the labs. I feel like if I could change one thing about the major, that would be on my list. That would be high up on my list, is like spreading out the beginning of the major, because it went from nothing to everything.
Yeah.
Like, we had maybe one immunology course in our first year of college.
We had 2, but the second one didn't really count because it was a seminar.
So as soon as we hit sophomore year and we had a lecture and a lab, both semesters, I think. 2 lectures in a lab second semester.
I think so.
It was a lot.
Yeah. It was definitely an adjustment to go from like our basic education, general education classes, to in-depth immunology. It was definitely different.
Yeah.
So what's one question or topic that you wish I'd asked you or we would have covered? And how would you have answered? Kind of wrapping things up.
I love talking about lab work.
Tell me more about it.
So I think that one question I love to answer, and I talked with Dr. Collins about this when she was touring some of the freshmen around, because she caught me in the hallway as I was walking back to the lab. She's like, can you tell me about your research experience and would you recommend it? Especially in this major. And I said, well, I can tell you about my research experience. I started in an optometry lab in IRMA, which is the building adjacent to us, for those who don't know. And I didn't know anything about what I was researching, and it didn't make any sense. And I was trying to process all this information that the PI that I worked under was giving me, and he was wonderful. Everybody in that lab was wonderful. There was no, no malicious intent from any of them, but I just didn't enjoy it because I didn't understand it, one, and it wasn't the field that I loved. Yeah. So during the summer of last year, I moved over to the Dameron Barbier Labs at the Vaccine Development Center here in Health Science. And I started working with Dr. Melson Kilich, and we really took off on the Pseudomonas project. And I came back to the stuff that I really enjoy, the stuff that interests me every day. So it kind of shifted my perspective of lab work. And I really do enjoy the work that I do. I mean, obviously some days it's a pain in the ass. That just is what it is. Yeah. Work is work, and everybody understands that. But feeling like I'm able to make a contribution is amazing. Feeling like I'm able to push forward research is amazing, even at the small level of an undergraduate researcher. Yeah. I feel like the people in the lab really make you feel, at least for our lab, the people really make you feel included, and they make you feel like the work that you're doing is super important. So I would recommend working in a research lab to any undergraduate student, not just in IMMB. Find something that you really like. Find someone that you're interested in. Find a professor, find a research assistant, find somebody that you're interested in, ask them about it. Say, what do you do? How can I get into this? It's definitely changed my perspective on college, and I wish I had started sooner. Yeah.
That's exactly how I feel. I wish I would have started sooner.
Right.
Because I started right after you in that same semester. So what is a tip? You kind of just gave him a tip, but what's another tip for the audience in regarding either the major or STEM majors in general or college?
I would tell everybody, because Shaughnessy and I really didn't have the chance to, as soon as you get here, make friends. Yes. Reach out, meet new people, join whatever you're interested in, whether that be, a gym, a club, something extracurricular at the university. There's even go clubbing. I mean, just go outside, go meet new people, join something, be a part of something. I feel like we missed out on that the first 2 years, so it's super important that now that you have the chance and now that you're not restricted, to go out and just be social. Yeah. And figure out where you want to be.
Definitely missed out. I feel like our major, like the 10 of us, didn't really become close until junior year.
Exactly. Because, we didn't spend all that much time together.
No. It was COVID restrictions and masks and everything. So the name of my this is kind of funny. The name of my podcast is called Samples of Science Cuisine.
Oh, I like it. It's very cute.
So what is to kind of end on like a little quippy note, what's your favorite type of cuisine or your favorite type of food?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think in a past life I would have been a food reviewer. Yeah. My family and I love traveling and trying new things. But as I mentioned earlier, I had my mother and I both have celiac disease, so it's made eating in different places and different cuisines a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. But I think if I had to pick, I love Italian food. That's everybody's answer, right? I love Italian food, but I also love Mexican food. Yeah. Any kind of Mexican food. They have a lot of like corn-based everything, so I don't really have to restrict on what I eat there, and that's like my dream. So I love any kind of Mexican food. Anything spicy too.
Yeah, spicy is good.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me today. This was very insightful.
Of course. Very fun.